Vaccines too late to stop MMT. Today, nearly 15 million Americans have tested positive for COVID-19, while more than 281,000 people have died with the virus. Case loads are actually higher than April, although deaths are not that large due to improved treatments and new therapeutics. The US recorded more than 4 million infections in November alone, more than twice that of October 1.9 million infections. But here's the good news. Several highly effective COVID vaccines are already approved for use or are expected to be approved soon. Major pharmaceutical companies are preparing to produce billions of doses, and several billions have already been produced, just awaiting final approvals. This vaccination campaign will start slowly and will take time to be effective. In the United States, these vaccines will first go to healthcare workers and nursing home patients. Gradually, infections will be available for those over the age of 60 and those with comorbidities such as asthma and diabetes. Towards the end of next year, most of the US population seeking the vaccine should have it. Similar efforts are continuing in Europe, Japan, and Australia. Russia and China have their own vaccines. We don't know much about them, but they are slowly being used on their own populations. So this is good news. The bad news is that vaccines won't save the US economy in time. Lockouts will meanwhile be reintroduced as the only remedy in addition to basic recommendations such as hand washing, social distance, and masks. Unfortunately, the evidence is clear that lockouts don't work. The virus is highly contagious, goes wherever he wants. But politicians don't know what else to do and are driven by the need to appear to be doing something. So lockdowns are the solution. Lockouts may not be effective against the virus, but they are very good at destroying economies. The same pattern we saw last spring is repeating itself. Businesses won't just be locked down. They will either go bankrupt or close forever. Job losses will not be temporary. They will be permanent. If the lockdowns decrease, there will be no pent-up demand. A missed meal is a missed meal. Next time I go out, I will not order 10 dishes, I will order 1. The US economy will likely go into recession in the first quarter of 2021. This will mark the first double dip recession since the 1980 to 81 period, when a new recession began just 1 year after the end of the previous recession. This time, the gap may only be 6 months, since the last recession ended on June 30, 2020. Stock markets have yet to fix this impending recession. They will be coming soon. Meanwhile, assuming Joe Biden will be the next president, his administration will have to face this recession. How can its economic team try to stimulate the economy and restore growth? It can be said that Janet Yellen will be the next Treasury Secretary. Economist Stephanie Kelton has urged the Fed and Treasury to combine into a single spend monetization entity to implement the modern monetary theory. It gained influence in democratic policy circles, as it will affect fiscal and monetary policy. In a new Biden administration, investors should pay attention to this, whether they agree or not. Appointing former Fed Chairman Janet Yellen as the new Treasury Secretary is a clear sign of what a Biden administration is planning to do. What better way to achieve this merger than by appointing the former Fed chief as the new chief of Treasury, and is his former deputy still in place with the Fed? With a former Fed chief as the new Treasury chief, I would say mission completed. For those unfamiliar with MMT, he says the US can spend as much as it wants, borrow to cover deficits, and the Fed can make money from debt by issuing money. Theory is not a theory because it lacks evidence. and there is nothing modern in it because it has existed for over 100 years. Yet there's all the anger these days in Washington, D.C. MMT has three basic principles. The first is to treat the Treasury and the Fed as a single asset with a single balance sheet. Legally, the two institutions are completely separate, but MMT insists that the government can operate as if it were. This means combining Treasury and Fed operations into one engine for spending, borrowing, and printing. The second idea is that citizens should accept dollars, whether they like it or not, because you need dollars to pay taxes, and if you don't pay taxes, you go to jail. In fact, the dollar is backed by the barrel of a gun, to put in Mao Zedong words. The third idea is that there is no practical limit to how much the US can lend. The US debt to GDP ratio is about 130% today, up to 160% last year. But MMT cheerleaders point to Japan's rate of over 250% as proof that the US can borrow much more. These ideas are all very flawed. Japan is not a good case study because the Japanese buy their own debt, the US depends on foreign investors, and the Japanese economy has barely been growing for 30 years. Try this in the United States. You can combine the Fed and the Treasury operationally, but when it is clear that you are making money from all the new debt in the markets, thrust erodes, rates rise, and this pyramid scheme collapses. And when trust is lost, citizens may turn to land, gold, silver, natural resources, and other assets as dollar alternatives. You don't owe taxes for unrealized profits. So the MMT tax police will have nothing to keep them busy. MMT is a disaster under construction, may take several years to hit the game. If you invest in highly productive assets, it's okay to borrow money. However, if you spend to support a stagnant economy with charity, you dig a deeper debt hole for yourself. Multi-trillion-dollar open spending plans will soon emerge from the new Congress. The Treasury will spend money. The Fed will buy the Treasury debt with the newly minted money. Eventually, you end up with default, inflation, higher interest rates, higher taxes, or all of the above. The USA will go bankrupt. It's not a rosy script that the MMT crowd would want you to believe. Still, it may be coming soon. And an uninformed Janet Yellen will direct the entire operation. Most of the idea, comment, information, and criticism containing in these videos have been created by Daily News Report. Before making any important investment decision, use the information contained in these videos as a starting point for conducting your own research. If you make any investment or legal decision, it is advised to consult an expert before making this decision.